Our brains do some incredibly strange things when we're asleep. We talk, we walk, we panic. But what if all these bizarre nighttime behaviors aren't actually separate issues at all? What if they're all connected by one single powerful idea about how our brain systems can get totally out of sync? Okay, let's get into it. Have you ever had that feeling? It is genuinely unsettling, right? That moment of sleep paralysis where your mind is totally on, but your body is just stuck? Or the weird confusion of being told you were up and about, walking around with absolutely no memory of it? Yeah, these aren't just spooky campfire stories. They're real-life glitches in your brain's nightly operating system. So first up, you've got the classic sleepwalker. And we're not just talking about mumbling. We're talking about someone performing really complex actions, like getting dressed or even leaving the house, all while being effectively unconscious. And then there are night terrors. This is something else entirely. Imagine a sudden, blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night. Pure, raw panic. But here's the kicker. Afterward, there's absolutely no memory of a scary dream, just the terror itself. And maybe the most dramatic of all is dream enactment. We're talking about physically acting out your dreams, punching, kicking, shouting, as if you are literally living them in real time. So what on earth is going on here? At first glance, these things all seem totally different, don't they? One happens in deep sleep, another during dreams. One is kind of calm, another is super violent. But it turns out they might all be different symptoms of the exact same fundamental problem, a failure in how the brain manages its own boundaries at night. To really get this, we're going to use a simple but really powerful model. I want you to think of your brain's sleep function as having three core components. And normally, they're all supposed to work together in perfect harmony. But when they don't, well, that's when things get weird. First up, you've got the hardware. This is all the physical stuff, right? The brain circuits, the brain stem that acts like a gatekeeper, and even something as basic as your airway. For you to get a good night's sleep, all this equipment has to be in perfect working order. Simple as that. Okay, so if you have hardware, you need software, and that's our next piece. The software is all the programs that are running on that hardware at night. We're talking about the stories in your dreams, the emotional surges from your limbic system, and even the learned motor actions, like how to walk or talk. It's all that internal activity just buzzing away while you're out cold. And finally, we have maybe the most important part of all, the conductor. This is you. It's your conscious, self-aware mind, the part that's in charge, that provides executive supervision, that creates the story of who you are and actually records memories. Now, during the day, the conductor is in full control. But at night, it's supposed to be off stage, letting the rest of the crew do their work. So, this brings us to our first set of problems. Things like sleepwalking and night terrors. What's happening here? Well, it's pretty simple. The conductor is asleep, just like it should be, but the software starts running wild anyway. It's literally action without a director. Think about it. In sleepwalking, the motor software just activates on its own, and suddenly you're walking around. With night terrors, the emotional software goes into total overdrive, causing that pure panic. But here's the key connection. In both cases, the conductor is completely offline. And if there's no conductor, there's no one there to record a memory or create a story. That's why the person has total amnesia for the whole event. This phrase just puts it perfectly. Motor execution is happening without any executive supervision. It's pure action, without a story or any judgment. Your body is up and doing things, but the part of your brain that's supposed to make sense of it all, it's still deep, deep asleep. It's this bizarre state of being partially awake and partially asleep at the exact same time. Okay, so let's move on to our next case file, because this is where it gets even more interesting. We're going to talk about what happens during REM sleep, which, is when our dreams are at their most vivid. Now, normally, our brain has this amazing safety feature. It paralyzes our body, so we don't actually act out our dreams. But sometimes that safety mechanism, let's call it the motor gate, well, sometimes it fails. And what's fascinating here is that we see two completely opposite failures of the exact same system. On one hand, you have something called REM sleep behavior disorder, or RBD. Here, the motor gate is basically broken open, the paralysis fails, and the dream software just leaks right out into physical action. Then you have the flip side, sleep paralysis. Here, the gate is stuck shut. Your consciousness, the conductor, comes back online, but your body is still completely locked down. Two sides of the same coin. So that brings up a good question. what about regular old nightmares? They feel super dramatic, right? But in our model, a nightmare is actually the system working exactly as it's supposed to. The motor gate holds firm, so you don't act it out. The problem is purely in the software. The dream itself is just terrifying, and the conductor wakes up and remembers every single vivid detail. Okay, so we've got these glitches, these moments where the brain systems get totally out of sync. But that leads to the bigger question: what's causing these glitches in the first place? Well, it turns out the true culprit often isn't the brain's programming at all. It's a physical problem, something that's constantly forcing these boundary failures to happen over and over again. Let me introduce you to the primary troublemaker, obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA. And it's a really vicious cycle. Here's what happens. Your airway gets blocked while you're sleeping. Your oxygen levels start to plummet. Your brain, sensing danger, basically hits the panic button and yanks you partway out of sleep, just enough to get you breathing again. And get this can happen dozens, even hundreds of times a night, totally fragmenting your sleep, often without you even realizing it. And this is the crucial point. Every single one of those forced arousals is like a little earthquake hitting your sleeping brain. It's this constant, violent shaking that destabilizes the boundaries between all those systems we talked about. This is what creates the opportunity for the software to run without the conductor, or what causes that motor gate to glitch. So a lot of the time, these really dramatic sleep events, they're not the problem. They're the symptom of this much bigger underlying physical issue. Okay, so let's get practical. An occasional bit of sleep talking or a weird dream once in a blue moon, that's one thing. But when do these glitches cross the line? When does it become something you should actually talk to a doctor about? All right, here's your essential checklist. First, any risk of injury to you or someone else, that's a huge red flag. Also, if these events are new for you as an adult, if they're happening a lot, or if they seem to be getting worse, that's a sign, especially if it involves acting out dreams, the punching and kicking stuff. And maybe most importantly, if you have signs of that hidden driver we just talked about, things like loud snoring, gasping for air at night, or just being totally exhausted all day, that points directly to a possible underlying issue like sleep apnea that really needs to be addressed. So it really makes you think, doesn't it? What is your brain really doing after the conductor leaves the stage? For most of us, most of the time, the show runs pretty smoothly behind the curtain. But for some people, the actors start improvising, the stage crew starts running wild, and the result is this strange, unscripted performance in the middle of the night. All because the conductor isn't there to keep everyone in sync.